Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions concerning this watch. Today, a hugely collectible and discontinued model from Francois Paul Journe. This is the FP Journe Linesport Centigraphe Sport in aluminum. Made in 2011 to 2014, it was FP Journe's first sports watch and was part of the now discontinued aluminum series. So the model came out in 2011 and it preceded the Octasport by about 1 year. They were both discontinued in mid-2014 to make way for the Titanium series. Easy to tell them apart. Titanium has an anthracite gray that's more like the color of this dial, whereas the aluminum series is obviously a matte silver, and that's exactly what we have right here. For the first time, prior to reviewing this watch, I actually determined its mass on a very sensitive scale, and with all of the links you see in the bracelet right here, the mass was 53.34 grams. Extraordinary. Less than 2 ounces if you're a cowboy like us. So, in the old colonies, we would describe this in ounces, but everywhere else in the world, 53.34 grams. Now, the important thing to remember is that it has its own case shape, which makes it very distinct from the Souverain series. So, it doesn't have that typical round case that's duplicated on every Journe watch, regardless of price. It has this unique integrated bracelet design, which maybe doesn't surprise today, but back in 2011, this was not en vogue. This was very forward-looking by Journe. You have more of a tonneau-style case that has a round dial and a round movement, but then blends into the taper of the lugs. The movement, the dial, the bracelet, and the clasp are all made of aluminum, and you can see it uses a matte finish. Now, while there are some marks here, the aluminum, though difficult to manufacture, and ultimately that is the reason it was discontinued, it does not degrade rapidly, particularly in the presence of the rubber bumpers, which proved to age better than anyone expected for vulcanized rubber. You could see that there's a little bit of pitting, but the condition, and especially the physical integrity, remains superb. Throwing it on the wrist, my wrist is 16 centimeters in circumference, 42 millimeters in diameter is the size. It's 11.3 millimeters thick, and if we measure the furthest outward point to its opposite number on the other side, it's 48.6 millimeters across the wrist. So my wrist, 16 centimeters in circumference, flat across the top. It's a known quantity. I find that almost anyone can wear this well. So if you are a woman or you have a smaller wrist and you're worried about a large watch as it is rated as 42, the bottom line is it's so light that once you've sized the bracelet down properly, it's going to sit and fit comfortably, even if it's a little bit big for you. You can see with the domed bezel and a thin profile, it will slide underneath the cuff. Here's your down the barrel view right there. Here's your over the top. Taking a look at the bracelet, the rubber bumpers were designed originally to preserve the finish, and they've served admirably, but in time, there were a lot of complaints about them. People didn't like the idea of rubber on a luxury product. So as of about 2019, they went away, and kind of like the aluminum watch, the rubber is now highly sought as a discontinued collectible. That's always the way it works. So this has both rubber and it has the alu. Now, what's also important to remember is that this is a fairly easy bracelet to size with removable links fixed by screws, so no problem in that regard. Taking a quick look at the clasp, it's fairly simple. We have a spring-loaded ball bearing pin snaps for crisp action, and then, of course, a rubber-coated buckle that reminds us FP Journe invented and made this watch, just in case you forgot. Rolling around to the case, you can see the rubber is present again. A sheath for the chronograph trigger as well as the crown, and then there is a bumper on the 9 o'clock side. The finish is not uniform. As you can see, there is sort of a brushed pattern that you'll find laterally across the links and then vertically on the case band, and then a more non-directional media blast on top of the bezel, as well as on the case top. There's a very subtle bevel that runs all the way around the case. There's a good deal of nuance here. Journe always very nuanced about the way he designs his watches. And you can see that the bezel gasket is a fully expressed styling feature of the watch. Again, pre-owned watch. I want to make clear that there's a little bit of pitting of the bezel, but this is a well-preserved example. Now, a lot of folks get confused when they buy these and they start winding and they never get the watch to work. Well, the Centigraphe, all versions of it, require you to pull the crown out to the first position and wind it. That's pretty simple. Now, the second withdrawn position allows you to set the watch. And while it's not a highly water-resistant watch, at 30 meters water-resistant, it is a very sporty watch. And you can see there's no shortage of luminescence. What you can also see, and this is one of the pleasant surprises, remember FP Journe is all about design detail, these numerals are three-dimensional applied solid blocks of lume. So in addition to width and height, they also have volume, which is very cool. I guess you could say they have length, width, and height, which together give you volume. So the dial's made of aluminum, and unlike the standard Centigraphe Souverain, where you have the polished steel center dial bezel surrounding the subdials, here we have media blast, and you can see it's on aluminum. But what's also important is that we've done away with the kind of useless and fatuous and encumbering tachymeter scales that allow you on the standard Centigraphe to theoretically time an object moving between 6 and 36,000 kilometers per hour. Well, that was the most academic of features, and happily here it's gone, which allows Journe to open up these dials and use smoked sapphires so you can admire the works. You can see there's a secondary escapement that operates at super high frequency, so 100 beats per second, or, if you will, 50 hertz. Now, the other thing that's important is that that is a significant step up from the standard escapement of caliber 1506, which operates at 6 beats per second, or 3 hertz. So just keep that in mind. There's two different oscillation rates going on in this watch. In theory, this register can capture any one of 100 hundredths of a second, hence centigraphe. It is named after its ability to resolve intervals as small as 1/100th of a second. So the dials are 1 second per revolution, 20 seconds per revolution, and then 10 minutes per revolution, I should say. And you can see it's a nice layered, textured, toned, detailed dial with a little bit of much appreciated color. And you can see that the scale outboard, the chemin de fer for the minutes, it's actually cream and off-white like a chronomètre bleu would be. Turn it all over. The movement's large. 15 French lignes, so very large. And that is how you get the name of the movement, 1506. 15 French lignes, so multiply that by approximately 2.25, and then 06 year work started on the movement. The original Centigraphe Souverain won the GPHG Aiguille d'Or with this movement, so it is profoundly decorated and recognized. Now, when it's running fully wound manually, 80-hour power reserve. If the chronograph is engaged, then it's 24 hours, but given that the largest chronograph register is just 10 minutes, it's not really something you have to worry about. There are several patents applied here, one of which relates to this little trigger. It might look like a mono pusher, but on a mono pusher, once you stop, you must reset, whereas here, you have the ability to restart. So it's just a very cool and entertaining, by the way, how much do you love that restart? It's a very cool and entertaining rocker-style double trigger chronograph. The idea is that it's easier to operate on or off your wrist. And then on the reverse side, the other patented element is that there are two drivetrains. So by the way, this movement all in aluminum, that's exclusive to the Linesport series. Conventionally, this would be rose gold, but if there's one thing we know from Journe collecting, it's that the less common materials are always more valuable than the more valuable commodities. Gold is valuable as a commodity, but not as a Journe movement. The aluminum and the old brass movements are simply more collectible. But the patented element, this barrel at center, that's not just for the sake of pride of place. There are two drivetrains, one off the barrel arbor, which is sort of like the axle at the center of the barrel. That drives the chronograph. And then the edge of the barrel drives the time. So by creating two drivetrains, you lose power reserve when the chronograph is running, but unlike a conventional chronograph, you don't also slow down the watch by adding load to the one drivetrain. By creating two drivetrains off the barrel, Journe has done an end run against the loss of amplitude and the slowing of a conventional chronograph when the stopwatch is engaged. It has a free-sprung balance with a very large moment of inertia, so it's a massive balance that makes up for the somewhat low beat rate, and the free-sprung architecture allowing it to be very precisely adjusted and to be more shock tolerant, holding its regulation in the face of concussions and knocks on the wrist. A very cool watch on many levels, and the finishing is quite accomplished. Not auto-logerie, not at the Romain Gaultier, not at the Grubel 4C level, but definitely high luxury horology. Well done, handsome, and as always with Journe, very attractive. A watch you buy for its many virtues. It's entertaining, it's rare, it's a great investment, and you may never see another. It's also one of the lightest you'll ever encounter, and a lot of fun to boot. Reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.